lot worse. I want to piggyback on Robin. I really liked what you had to say in terms of, you know, supplying a police officer, trying to clean the place up. I think those things are very, very important. One of the suggestions I have is, I think, a little pre-planning, and I'm going to again piggyback on what you said in terms of the youth sports groups creating that endowment. But one of the things that I learned when we were at the ICS things is I think we need to have a better planning. In other words, we've talked about this, where we actually go through the town and really look to see, okay, Neil Snipes Park, how much of that can be used for commercial? You've hit on something, light industrial. My understanding of light industrial doesn't generate any money. And so what we want to do is, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, because it depends if it's point of sale. Is it a service? Depends on what they make. So maybe what we need to really do, and Andy's talked about this, is we really look at the businesses that generate the most money for the city and begin to go, okay, we want that business. If it's a light industrial, lower point of sale, I mean, who knew that Paul Blanco was going to generate the kind of money it's going to generate? So do we go after Paul Blanco, or do we go after, I think that we really need to do that. We need to pinpoint exactly what businesses we want, and we need to really look at properties we own and don't own. One of the things that is just a reality, and going just to Tump, and this is really important, there's a part of me that gets upset that there was so much money. If you start a business, you're going to have to pay into the Tump fund. But the reality is we get 11 cents for property tax. We do all the work. We do all the work for sales tax, and we get nothing back. Do you realize if we got one more penny from sales tax, we would double our what we're bringing in? Double it. And here we are, there's all these other in-place systems that control the government. But what if we did a campaign where we said, 1 penny more? We want 1 penny more. Because ultimately, Robin, the problem we have is, we do all the work, we generate all the business, we get nothing back. It goes to people that generate nothing in terms of, they give a service that's important and valuable to society, obviously. I'm not discounting that. But the reality is we don't generate enough money. So I'm good with this budget. What I would like to see, though, with the part-time workers is I want to see a report maybe in 3 months. The other thing that was hit on is trails. I actually brought that up last time and I got frustrated. But the truth is, we either have a code or we don't. And maybe what we need to do is send it to Streets and Trails, and we either, you know, when trails were put into place, the edict was from that long ago city council, I know things have changed, was it would never impact the general fund, because the residents had to take care of it. And I think he makes a good point. Are we large lots to trails to open space and parks? Or are we large lots to open space? The conduit is trails. And one of the things that, when Berwin and I went to a thing where they taught, this city of Norco is actually in the catbird seat. We're doing what everybody else wants to do. We have a nexus point with roads, and we're putting bikes in, and we're doing a lot of very cool things in terms of parks. There's a lot of things in the works. Snipes is one of them, but there's a lot of things in the works where there's large pieces of park that we now have the opportunity to turn into revenue generators. Many, many acres. And guess what? People are going to fight us. So I like this budget. I don't like being over budget, but at the same time, I want the cop. I like the part-time maintenance workers with the caveat that he's going to look at that, and that's my position. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't like it, and but with that, you know, our first directive is public safety. And when we have almost $700,000, we know we need an extra deputy and a CSO. And then with our fire, that increase of $400,000, I mean, we're well over $1 million, which is our #1 priority. And there's no choice with that. I had one other question. We have a $10,000 item for public art. I do not recall what that public art was at Engels Park.
This is a transfer from the Day of the Cowboy fund. We have to move it into the budget in order to use it. It was money that the committee raised So in order to do that, it has to be a budgeted item in our budget.
Okay, and it's from Day of the Cowboy?
Yes, that's
I just-
It's just moving the revenue in for expenditures.
Okay. I think everyone up here, I mean, we understand the trails and the maintenance, but I think part of it either goes back, and we keep harping on this, but it's what our code is about, maintaining the property in front of your house, whether it becomes just a notification to the neighbor, or if it's a code enforcement case. We'll see a great example. I don't think it was 4th and Temescal, I think you meant 4th and Valley View.
Maybe, I can't remember.
Because-
Telephone pole
Well, they're both then.
I brought up before for Tim's Kill about
Okay.
6 weeks ago, we still got the same weeds on it.
Yeah, and 4th and Valley View, and that's gonna look very impressive this weekend with a few thousand people coming to the Disney Ranch, and we'll be able to turn right by where all the weeds are, at that corner. So,
You're right, that's
Yeah.
the street, because we looked at the Disney Ranch, it's right down the street. So
Yeah.
people, watch out for the left turn.
right, so, I get that part, believe me. And that's embarrassing. But I do side with Ted on these two workers, and maybe it's just something we need to maintain, but maybe it's something we can hold off on, and I think the reason that I object to the 2 part-time workers at this time, Brian, is that I don't believe I see any efficiency with court workers at all. But these are gonna be 2 minimum wage part-time park workers that are gonna have to sign up community workers, loading them in the van, load them in with tools, drive to a location, let them take their break, load them back up, go to lunch, come back, unload, take a break, and nothing gets done. If you want to guarantee me that you'll have a walking boss with mirrored sunglasses, I'll support it. But at this time, I think that, for $32,000 plus the equipment and that, I'd rather wait and see where we are in a few months with this. And it's more of, I just don't see the efficiency with those workers. I really don't. Everything else, I think pretty much it is what it is. Obviously Patty needs work or help. I'm not at angles as much as Ted is with the additional part-time worker. I mean, if we can hold on that for a while, we've held back on spending $50,000. And obviously we need the help at the counter on that. I did want to make sure, because it's not listed on this one, the $75,000 placeholder for the circulation element is out at this time. And that'll become a function of the planning commission.
What'll happen, because it, along with several other elements of the general plan, need updating. So what we'll do is periodically be bringing those to planning commission and city council, because city council has to adopt it. And instead of having a traffic study, traffic analysis, survey supported update to the circulation element, the one we'll bring is going to be more cosmetic in nature, not so visionary. That could be supported with an appropriate traffic study, but it will eliminate some inconsistencies and old information that's in it right now.
And that will satisfy.
Do that stuff.
Okay, but that'll satisfy the state,
Yep.
our state obligation with our circulation element at this time.
Yes.
Okay. Did council you want to just take a consensus on the part-time workers? Seems like Ted and I want to hold off, but Kevin?
I think that
Just so we give staff.
I was entertained by how you characterized it, but Brian, what he said is that he will actually oversee it. And I think that, while I understand it, and again, by the way, it's not that I like this budget, it's that I understand it. But if we can maybe get him started and in 3 months see how he's doing, if in fact it's what you describe, I'd like to see if he can use those court workers and actually clean up the city. But I do take your point, seriously.
No,
My
I just
opinion,
wanted
if we couldn't do it, I'd be recommending to pull the plug on
I
it.
just want to get a consensus so we're giving you some direction. Ted, I think I know your opinion.
Well, I'm just gonna reiterate what you said, and that would be for the 2 part-time park maintenance for Horse Trail and the part-time maintenance worker for the facility up there, right? Only because I've worked with the court workers. I did it when I was in the sheriff's department, I've done it here. I concur with Mayor Newton, it just, you spin your wheels trying to keep track of, give them the breaks and everything, and you don't get anything out of them. I'd rather have, if you want to spend some money, you want to clean something, then set aside some money for the CAL FIRE crews. When they go out, they work and they clean up things. And I'd approve that if you want to spend something for that. But right now, those 3 part-time workers, I see no reason for it.
Robin?
I'm going to go ahead and concur with Ted on that particular fact, because I also have been in the area while the court workers are up there. So I would concur on that, although the CAL FIRE idea, I do like that. So if we could change it, I'd be up for that.
Yeah, can we get like $25,000 or something?
I'd go along with the CAL FIRE deal, but let me get something clear here. Now, you're talking about 2 part-time park maintenance workers. Why are you gonna have a straw boss to load them up and haul them somewhere and then give them their breaks and everything? Because if they're hired part-time, getting paid, it'd be just like the little guys that bring the agendas at night. They don't have a driver, they drive themselves. They go up to the park, they turn the lights off. They don't have a driver and a straw boss. You're comparing these guys to court workers.
No, the two part-time park maintenance workers, they would be the ones shuttling the court workers and managing them on the weekend.
I thought the 2 part-time maintenance workers was gonna be out there swinging shovels and hoes and.
You are correct. They are going to be working staff, not just sitting there and presenting to court workers or just sitting or leaning on a fence. No, they have to be working staff. There is no other substitute for that.
Be just like the little guys that open up Nellie Weaver Hall and deliver the agendas, and they go up and turn the lights on and off. They're on their own. They don't have a guard with them.
That's correct. And the community service or court workers are to help augment manpower if we get them. If not, they will be assigned to do those trails or those corrections throughout the city.
Right, that's
Whether there's 1 court worker or 10 court workers.
That's what I understood when we talked about hiring these 2 guys at the budget hearing, that these were going to be employees of the city. They're not going to be wearing the orange uniforms and stuff like that. So, am I correct? Okay.
But they'd also be babysitting the court workers.
If we don't have them, they won't be babysitting them. They'll be out working.
You're right.
doing the
And
work
I guess we need to
themselves.
quantify what is babysitting. If they were working for me, they wouldn't be babysitting because they wouldn't be there.
The
I
court
would
work-
DR,
the
that's
court
right,
workers.
I would DR them and they're gone. They're out, they're heading back to the sheriff's department or the volunteer center. They're there to work. If they're not gonna do what is assigned, then they're DR'd and they're released immediately. We don't have to put up with that. It's not part of the assignment of those type of people. Staff will put them to work, and if they don't perform, they'll be returned back to the court system. And that's an immediate, no question asked thing. We DR them on a form and they're gone. I ran the program for 15 years before this, and I know that I've been successful in doing this. So, and my expectations for this program were about accomplishing the goal. If we don't do it, then we're not going to be able to do it. I think Ted's suggestion of CAL FIRE, it's great. You have guys who are there and will do the job and are very good at what they do. And they also understand if they don't follow through, the particular person who's assigned to them from CAL FIRE will have them go back into the institution, which is the worst thing they want to be, because it's a lot better to be on those crews.
But these two guys here are not court workers, they're part-time employees of the city.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
And I agree with the CAL FIRE guys, they get it done. Yeah,
Maybe the way to look at this is, part of the problem with the court workers is that they sometimes can't get there in time and they have to leave a little early. Is that still the same situation, or can they be there like at 10 and then leave at 4?
Mine don't go anywhere because they're incarcerated in prison, so you're referring to.
No, but what I meant by that is that is that sometimes they're not effective because they get to work an hour or 2 hours. But I guess the bigger question would be, I could go along with excluding those things if we as a council could commit to solving the problem. And the problem is, what are we going to do with our trails? Maybe there's a better way to spend the money. I've worked with Brian for a long time. I trust him. If he says he's gonna make this work, he'll make this work. So maybe a suggestion is we see if he can make it work, but at the same time, I think we need to really look at we've been talking about this since I got on Park and Rec Commission in, 97? And we have yet to truly answer the question of what do we do with our trails. So maybe we need to agendize trails, give it to Streets and Trails, do something so we finally make a decision, because we do have rules on the books.
Well, I think that goes back to our discussion from the other meeting that, with the commission, that we need to use our Streets and Trails Commission, and we need to start first with a trails standard.
My understanding is we have a trail standard, and that,
No, we don't.
No, we do have,
Well,
we do.
we do have a trail standard for parks and LMDs.
Right.
Yeah.
That standard is not throughout the city. That's
Something
the
adopted.
issue. And one of the concerns that the Public Works Director has is that to have a standard, to meet that standard, you have to have the resources to keep that standard at that level. Otherwise, a standard is futile to have. Now, the difference there is in the assessment district is they pay to maintain that standard. And in the parks, where we have a trail, it's part of the overall park acreage, so they have to maintain that standard. It's in our specifications. The difference is that in all of our bridle trails throughout the city, we have a construction standard, which is when we reconstruct a trail or build a new trail, that trail, as soon as we open it, has already degraded to not the construction standard. So we have to have some sort of a standard in between there that keeps the trail safe and optimal for people to use. The challenge is how do we maintain that level of standard? If we can have a standard, but how do we keep it? And that's really the challenge, I think, overall, not only for those commissions engaged in this, the council, for staff, and merely what I'm presented to you through this budget process this year was an alternative, because we haven't really done anything in the last several years. And it was, and the public works guys at their best effort are out chasing infrastructure problems all the time, and they just can't get to it. So the idea was to bring something back to the council, and at the time, we weren't sure we were going to be at a $2 million shortfall. So when we were first looking at this, but it was to bring an alternative back to try something that we haven't done before. I think Bill Naylor is correct, is that also materials are an emphasis in related to that. We have about 91 miles of developed trails in the city. We have about 130 miles overall, but some of that is not developed. How do we maintain 91 miles of trail and try and keep it at some sort of a safe standard? I think that's the big question. How are you going to get there? We don't have enough volunteers to cover that. It's not realistic. And even with the CAL FIRE crews, as good as they are, Our trouble is if a fire breaks out, that's the priority. And so you may lose them for a couple weeks, and then you may get them back, and when they're here, they're great. I mean, you get stuff done. It's amazing. However, it's also getting them on the schedule and then being able to have a consistent program in place. And so, you know, whether we approve this or not, it was more of my recommendation to Andy and discussions with Chad is to try something. And so whether we do it or we don't, that's okay. But I think it's something for a question, it's a question for us to talk about on the bigger picture. What are we going to do in the future? And how are we going to deal with that? And maybe it's worth a budget work, some sort of a workshop on that with both the commissions and Parks and Recreation, Streets and Trails. I don't know, but I do know that it's a bigger picture for us to do, because if not, you can go out and start an enforcement, but we only have one code enforcement officer and one part-timer. So that's a lot of regulation there too. And some people, you can go down the road and you can see how nice they keep their trail, and then their neighbors don't do anything. And so, and we've tried, we've sent mailers out, we've done a lot of ways of trying to get that message out. But again, in some places it works, and a lot of other places it doesn't.
Well, I'll agree with you, it has to be part of the discussion, and it should be part of the education discussion we have with the bigger picture of what the residents would like to see here in the near future and next year.
Mr. Mayor, is there a possibility, and without, if we approve this budget, and to postpone that, at least the 2 park maintenance workers till mid-year, and let you work on a solution from CAL FIRE, and you come up with this streets and trails, get with Chad, and come up with a standard so we can get this, and then come up with something that's gonna work, rather than just, okay, so we need to do this, not saying we don't, but what is it gonna cost if we have CAL FIRE crews, and then the standard that we need to do for maintenance of this? Because right now, all I'm looking at is 2 guys are gonna go out and hoe weeds and fix a few fences, and that's not what we're trying to do.
There's a bigger picture.
Right, and that's what it's saying. And I think this may be a start, but I think this is something that when we get a chance and look at the budget come January of next year, you go through your workshops, you have something, we can probably look at this and adjust it and go from there. Rather than trying to, because right now I think we're beating this dead horse up on it, so.
Well, if you put that into a motion, I can support that. If you'll put into a motion that those stipulations are included and postpone it to January, and that you look at those 2 things, and that we look at the bigger picture as you described it, I can support that.
Staff would be happy to work with, I think Parks and Recreation Commission, Streets and Trails, Scott and his people, and talk about some solutions and take a look at the bigger picture and bring that back. I think I'm okay with that. But I think it needs to be part of our news discussion.
Which one do you want to cut out, Ted? Totally clear.
The 2 part-time maintenance workers, and I really, that one, and then the other part-time maintenance worker, until, this might be again back to January, that one, discussion in January. Because I know why you need it, it's because we're making revenue on the corrals, and I know that Patty is now over, was 108% over last year's
Oh yeah, and actually.
for rentals.
Yeah, and have really actually, and plus with the 3 new roping bookings that we have just received contracts on, our needs are increasing as we try to fulfill multiple day events.
I just know what happens to those part-time workers, is they go, hey, I need you over here, and they're not up at the park. And that's a scheduling issue that y'all need to work out. But I just see it too
So
much.
you're talking about this one.
The part-time, 2 part-time maintenance workers and the 1 part-time maintenance worker for the facility.
What about this one?
For Patty? No, that needs to be done. You're talking about?
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
That'd say 46,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that much, but let's bring those back in January. If we can, make that a motion to bring those back in January.
But with the caveat that we're gonna really look at the big picture.
Yep.
We're not gonna postpone it for another 12 years. Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on all this, and if you want to include the as amended in your motion.
So make a motion to approve the budget as submitted with the elimination of the 2 part-time maintenance workers and 1 part-time maintenance worker for Ingalls, with looking at it in mid-year in January. And to,
That's just trails. whatever.
and what do you need more of?
I wanna know that when we walk out of here, that there's actually gonna be
Yeah,
some
we'll-
movement forward in terms of the trails, in terms of the streets and trails. We're gonna look at it, we're gonna create a standard, a mid-standard.
Cheryl, you got that part? So we,
Creating a trail standard,
yeah, a trail standard till we
streets,
get
trails,
that.
and utility
Yep,
submission.
yep.
And we need to find a long-term solution for the trails to preserve them.
I'll second Ted's motion.
Councilmembers Hannah,
Yes.
Grunmeyer,
Yes.
Bash,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman,
Yes,
Mayor Newton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Cheryl. Item 5B, approval of 5-year capital improvement program. Gina?
So where did you play your basketball?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. I have a brief attachment with this item, and it's just recapping the estimated beginning fund balance for all of these projects. By fund at $14.5 million, with estimated revenues being $9.2 million. Estimated expenditures and transfers at $20.5 million for fiscal year 17-18, and a year-end fund balance of $3.3 million. And just bring your attention to the fact that we are spending a considerable amount. The plan is to spend $20.5 million next year. And did you have any questions?
Any questions for staff? Kevin? Ted? Robin?
Still 2 million short.
Irwin?
No, sir.
Okay. This is a public hearing. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Cheryl?
There are no cards on this item.
Okay. Go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring it back for any further discussion.
Motion to approve, or is it discussion?
Any discussion? Pretty simple after next year. There's nothing there. You have a motion and a second?
Councilmembers Hannah,
Yes.
Grunmeyer,
Yes.
Bash,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman,
yes.
Mayor Newton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6A, Sheriff's Department 2016 Annual Report. Lieutenant?
Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, city staff, and members of the public. The Riverside Sheriff's Department has enjoyed a proud collaborative relationship with the city and community since its incorporation in 1964. This will be a short overview of your Sheriff's Department services. The City of Norco contracts with the Riverside Sheriff's Department to provide all-inclusive law enforcement services to its residents. The Norco Sheriff's Office consists of 22 staff members, including 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 12 patrol deputies, 2 dedicated special enforcement team deputies, and 2 dedicated community service officers. Their duties include evaluating crime, identifying trends, and developing solutions to minimize or eliminate the negative effects on the community. Because of the contracted services with the Sheriff's Department, our deputies have access to many resources, including the helicopter, SWAT, bomb team, forensics, and crime analysts. With the use of our Detective Bureau and Special Enforcement Team, we conduct regular sex offender and probation parole compliance checks. Mail theft is a crime that seems to be increasing not only in Norco but other jurisdictions as well. We have made it a priority to investigate those crimes and identify and arrest the suspects involved. To date, we have identified and arrested 18 suspects for mail theft and related crimes and have recovered hundreds of stolen pieces of mail belonging to Norco residents. Our diligence will continue. In 2016, we had 9,179 calls for police service. This is a 1.6% increase over 2015, and over the last several years, there has been a steady increase. Part 1 crimes, which are crimes reported to the FBI for statistical purposes, include homicides, forcible rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. All have seen an overall 32.1% increase. This is being driven by a 31.8% increase in property crimes and a 36.3% increase in violent crimes. There appears to be a direct correlation with the increase in property crime and the implementation of Proposition 47 and AB 109, which essentially reduced penalties and sentencing for numerous crimes and offenders. With the coordination of our sergeants and set deputies, we have developed a close working relationship with the community and local businesses. We have educated local businesses on ways they can prevent and reduce crime and have established a neighborhood watch program that consists of 4 neighborhoods and over 80 residents. The program continues to grow. Our volunteer group, the Norco Citizens Patrol, have volunteered almost 5,774 hours of time to the community last year. Our traffic enforcement has been very active. During the federal fiscal year 15-16, the city received a grant from the Office of Traffic Safety to conduct traffic enforcement and education activities. As a result, our deputies conducted 17 OTS and city-funded traffic enforcement operations, including DUI safety checkpoints, DUI saturation patrols, crosswalk safety operations, and distracted driver operations. Deputies issued over 1,726 traffic citations, 280 parking citations, and arrested 63 persons for driving under the influence. Overall, our traffic collisions have increased, including a 30.7% increase with injury collisions and an 8.1 increase in non-injury traffic collisions. We did have 1 fatal collision at the end of 2016. These collisions were most likely a result of additional vehicles on our city streets from nearby freeway and roadway construction. This traffic volume increase is especially noticeable during the commuter hours. We continue to analyze our traffic collision statistics every 2 weeks and deploy our resources toward areas where these collisions occur. We continue to foster partnerships with the community and have participated in many outreach programs, including Shop with a Cop, Coffee with a Cop, National Night Out, and our continuing Unload program. In conclusion, I would like to thank the Mayor, members of City Council, City staff, and members of the public for making public safety a high priority and for all your support and partnerships. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Berwin?
Yeah, thanks, Lieutenant, for the report. Good job you guys do every day. I read everything you send out and you've been successful with solving a lot of crime, but I noticed you're gonna have the Coffee with a Cop here pretty quick. Are you gonna have the National Night Out this year?
The National Night Out has traveled from the cities that are under the command of Herba Valley Station, so I think that plan is still being reviewed. I think Norco is not going to be on the next round for this, but obviously in the future, when we rotate back through, it'll be part of the program.
But it'll be in one of the 3 cities this year? I mean,
I believe so, yes.
okay.
Yes, and Norco will be obviously invited to participate in that.
Okay, thank you.
Robin? Ed?
All I can say is good job by your staff on this week. A lot of kudos. Everybody complains until they need you, and then they're there. But Arturo's sitting back there, and where's your partner? Do you hide and go home? Got the Deputy of the Year, Matt Award on the other ones. Just good job. Good job.
Thank you, I'm very proud of my staff.
And you should be.
Yeah. You forgot the big dog.
Great job, thank you.
Eric, good work.
Thank you.
Captain Dan, you guys are doing great.
Thank you.
This action is a receive and file. I'll make a motion.
Second.
Councilmembers Hannah,
Yes.
Grunmeyer,
Yes.
Bash,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman.
Yes.
Mayor Newton.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Item 6B is appointment for 2 city council members to the Norco College Traffic Advisory Committee.
Yes, that's mine.
Andy?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is a request by Norco College President Dr. Brian Rees, requesting that the City Council appoint 2 members of the City Council to serve on the Norco College Traffic Advisory Committee. Over the last several months, Dr. Rees has led outreach efforts to try to present information to Norco residents, to business leaders, business people, as well as college students, to get them to be aware of the traffic issues that are facing the college. Specifically is the issue of providing a secondary access to the college. During the time that the president has engaged the public on this item, he has presented several options to providing secondary access to the college. And he has also received several inputs and recommendations. The purpose of the advisory committee is to consider all the input that has been supplied to the college president and to ultimately make a recommendation that can come back, that will go back to Norco College, as well as other stakeholders, including the city of Norco, in trying to come up with a solution to the traffic issues that are facing the college. In addition to the 2 members of the City Council requested to be appointed to this Traffic Advisory Committee, Corona and Norco Unified School District has also appointed 2 voting members. Riverside Community College District has also appointed their representative. Along with the voting members of this Traffic Advisory Committee, there will be also non-voting members, which will include members from the Navy as well as civic organizations. And these will be the group that, again, will make recommendations that will be considered by the decision makers in terms of coming up with ultimate solutions for doing a secondary access to the college. Dr. Rees is here in the audience, and he's been waiting patiently to answer any questions that you might have. And with that, I conclude my remarks, and again, Dr. Rees is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Andy. Does council have any questions either for the city manager or Dr. Rees? Okay.
I do have a question.
If you would care to step
I
up.
heard that Bill Hedrick spoke with Congressman Calvert, and Congressman Calvert is amenable to running the road to 4th Street. That he said he thinks it could be worked out as long as the college pays for the land going there. If You heard that?
I have not heard that, but that is good news.
It's true, but I mean, it's a pretty reliable source, and they say Bill Hedrick's the one that told them, so.
The only complaint, it's a good solution, was the original solution that was talked about. The only negative comment I've heard is from Commander Murray. He is worried about, if we run all the way through 4th Street, that it'll interfere with the Navy entrance, and he's worried about issues connected with.
He's mad because you just demoted him.
Maybe,
He's captain. Right?
well, okay, Captain Murray, yeah. But I think he's leaving in December, so maybe the new captain will have another attitude or another perspective on it. The previous captain didn't want us to cut through that property at all. That's behind JFK. There's about 20 acres there that's owned by the college. It's undeveloped. So I did talk to Captain Murray, and he is willing to have the road cut through that area and connect into Market Street. But he's reluctant to support going all the way up to 4th Street. But, if Congressman Calvert's for it, that'd be very helpful. Yeah.
It's something that
He's a good friend.
I'd send me an email to track that down.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
My recommendation is to appoint Mayor Pro Tem
Well, yeah, I guess you are familiar
Ted
with
Hoffman and Councilmember Robin Grunmeyer to the Norco College Traffic Advisory Committee.
I heard they were trying to get in through mountain to Belgium, the back way.
Councilmembers Hannah? Grunmeyer?
Yes.
Bash?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman? Mayor Newton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
You know, Ted,
I know,
I just love appointing you to,
I'm just giving you
Kevin broke me in pretty good. Now I'm just trying to pass that down the road.
this turnaround,
Okay, wrapping it up. City Council, City Manager, Staff Communications. Kevin?
Nothing.
Ted?
Yeah, earlier tonight, we talked about the ISIS conference, and one of the things that, when I was there, is a lot of people looked at 6th Street, but 6th Street has such restrictive zonings with the C4. What I would like to do is throw this back to Steve and the Planning Commission to come up with some better ways so we can allow for more mixed uses and uses in that zoning. For those you don't know, initially 6th Street was all in the redevelopment area with plans for the Great Big Western Wares and everything on both sides with this unique horse town facades and everything, which I'm not against, but that's when we had a redevelopment agency. We don't have one anymore. So we don't have the extra funding and process to get those started anymore. So Steve, I'm gonna throw it to you because we've had people come up that want to build there, but can't. And with the almost 13,000 trips through that area of 6th Street alone, I think we need to relook at what can be used there and what can't. So if it's okay, we'll throw it to the Planning Commission to have them look at it and get some ideas, or you have something else in mind?
Do we need to agendize that direction, or? Okay. I mean, and I agree with Ted. I've had the conversations with Steve and the city manager also that we need to make some changes. Anything else, Ted?
That's it, thank you.
Robin?
Well, I guess I would just look at agendizing some type of either endowment or fundraiser or something so that we can get some of these community areas taken care of, so.
Councilmembers Hannah? Grunmeyer?
Yes.
Bash?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman?
Yes.
Mayor Newton?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Anything else, Robin?
Yes, sir.
Berwin?
No, I don't have anything, thank you.
Lieutenant?
No, sir.
What's the date again for Coffee with the Cop? Polly's Pies,
Yes, Polly's Pie, I believe it's June 25th, it's a Wednesday, it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning,
and you're buying.
a couple of hours. The coffee's free, thanks to donations from Paul.
Okay. Chief,
I'll be there.
free breakfast. Gina? Brian? Steve? Cheryl?
Just a quick note that the city clerk's office continues to receive applications from the public to serve on the city's 4 commissions and the Economic Development Advisory Council. Recruitment ends on Monday, June 12th at 6 p.m. So anyone having questions or needs more information, feel free to call the city clerk's office.
Thank you. Andy?
The city clerk is going to be contacting you to arrange for a study session so that we can formally discuss the results of the community survey that was recently completed. So if you could make time available so we can do that as quickly as possible. Appreciate that.
Anything else? Anything else?
No.
Okay. Then we're adjourned. Thank you.